When an industry evolves, it's often because the people within it choose to lead the change. Welcome to Tradies Who Lead, the podcast about everyday leadership for everyday legends. I'm Ashley Daltecki, a diesel mechanic by trade and your host. In this episode, we are joined by Chris, a sales manager in the wind energy industry who's passionate about driving clean energy solutions and building a more sustainable future. With a strong background in sales and renewables, Chris brings deep insight into leadership, innovation, and the power of strategic partnerships. Chris is also a strong advocate for women in trades, actively championing diversity and inclusion across the industry. With a commitment to growth, both personal and professional, Chris is here to share his journey, values, and forward-thinking leadership lessons from the renewable energy sector. Thanks for joining me on the podcast, Chris.
Thanks, Ash. Thanks for having me.
So what is leadership to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for me, leadership's really about inspiring and guiding others. I think if you can lead and inspire people and guide them in their tasks, they will grow and that's what you want. So to me, it's about guiding and showing people that, you can do a lot more and you can do a lot and showing them the way to do that.
Is there a specific memory you have about when you thought about leadership or saw yourself as a leader for the first time? Or is there a journey that you can look back on and see where it started for you?
I think for me, very young, I played a lot of sport at a young age. And I think very early on, I saw myself as taking on a leadership role. I always liked to get involved and be very involved with everything I did in sport. So I sort of took on a leadership role in sport. But, when I started working, I took on a leadership role very early at 18 in a call center. I started managing, people from the ages of 18 up to 60. So I think I've kind of been thrust into leadership pretty early in both, my sporting career and my work career.
I can imagine being a leader so young brought a whole range of challenges because age does kind of come into some of our traditional archetypes of, well, what is a leader? And it's usually that, you've got to have lots of years under your belt and you've got to have lots of lived experience. Did you experience many hurdles in that space?
Yeah, I did. I had to come to terms with managing people who were double or nearly triple my age. That was a bit of an eye opener. But I think, I put myself in the other people's shoes and, tried to think of things from their perspective. They've got this chirpy little 18-year-old that's trying to tell them what to do. And, I tried to make sure that I delivered my content and my, my role to them in a way that would resonate with them and just treated them, with respect and not like I was their manager. I was more, I'm here to help you. And, that's my role. And you don't have to see me as your manager, just see me as someone who's here to help you do your role better.
I'm curious to understand how you came to that mindset because I do think when it comes to leadership, we often have these natural styles ourselves, but we're often more capable as leaders when we can be flexible. And obviously dealing with a workforce that was across many generations, that was obviously, I guess, more apparent in your day-to-day role. How do you show up as an everyday leader?
I take a lot from my boss, and his philosophy is I wouldn't ask anyone to do anything I wouldn't do myself. And that really resonates with me. And, going to work every day, I ensure that I'm leading from the front. I'm always, doing and what I would expect of my, my team, not asking anything of them that I wouldn't do myself, and just treating everyone with, with respect. In our organization, no one's bigger than anybody else. Everyone can dig in and do every task. No one, egos aside, we all just get there, do our job and go home at the end of the day. But we do it with a smile and everyone, puts in when they need to. And, I'm the first to put my hand up. If someone says, hey, we've had a spill downstairs, can someone grab a mop and go and do it? I'll jump up. Yep, I've got 5 minutes free. I'll go and do it. And, I like to think that if everybody sees me doing that, if something pops up there, they're more willing to jump and help as well.
For those who might not know much about the wind industry. Can you give us a snapshot of what it is and what kind of roles exist within it?
The wind industry is probably still very young in Australia. Basically, the wind industry is wind turbines that are built to generate electricity that then obviously takes some demand off the grid, but also help with our sustainability and our carbon emissions. So the roles that are available out there are very vast. From development stage, you've got environmentalists, people who work out on site surveyors, engineering, through to construction. You've got crane operators, civil engineers, people who are actually physically building the turbines. You've got a lot of electricians and electrical components and mechanical components. So you got your sparkies, you've got your hydraulics, your mechanics guys, that sort of thing. And then that sort of, once a turbine's built, it flows through into technicians who basically maintain and keep the turbines running. You got a few roles that are sort of a bit more extreme on the outliers, and that's the blade technician. So the guys that hang out the side of a turbine 100 meters in the air that, sand blades and repair blades for whether a bird's hit it or something like that. So the roles are vast. There's entry level roles through to really niche specialist roles. There's a lot of opportunity and a lot of new roles that pop up all the time. New construction projects, new construction methods, new turbines and things like that. So yeah, very very vast and a lot that are available.
I imagine being in such a new space that industry is kind of leading a change in power generation. Being in the training and development space with Skylar Education, what role do you see you having as a business and also in that developing our future workforce?
Yeah, so for us, we're all about empowering people to go to work every day and come home at the end of the day. So our core focus is safety. We do safety training, we do advanced safety training, not just for the wind industry, but for the broader blue collar industry. But we work really hard to ensure that the training that we have rubs off onto our participants and that they then go out onto site and put safety right at the forefront. The wind industry is dangerous. These guys are working some over 100 meters up in the air, remote areas, harsh climate. A lot of the time, they're very, very far away from, emergency services. So our training is vital for if a situation does pop up, that somebody will have the skills to be able to either save themselves or save their workmate. So our training is quite intense, but the positive participation from everyone every day is phenomenal. And if you walk into the average TO, you'll see people just in classrooms slumped over, just there because they have to be there. With our training, it's not like that. Everyone that comes in is very hands-on, very focused on the industry, and everyone works as a team and they help guide each other while they're being trained. It's a real positive environment to be involved in. It's really fun and exciting, and every day's a new challenge, but it's always positive to see how we can help people with potentially saving people's lives.
I can imagine that's really rewarding work. And I guess from the perspective of that training almost proactively, because obviously the aim is that these situations shouldn't occur on a workplace, but in the situation where something goes wrong and they are occurring and it is an emergency response or it is first aid on site without close access to some of those more well-trained resources, I guess it's kind of a reflection of sometimes having that proactive training for the off chance that situation is going to come up. It is completely life-saving in your field for sure. In terms of leadership, do you find that you yourself have had any of that proactive kind of training and support or mentorship that you've kind of tucked an idea away, been like, oh yeah, that's not really for me right now, and that proactive training has actually benefited you or your leadership style or just the way you interact with people down the line?
Honestly, that's something that happens on a daily basis. Everyone that comes and does our training is a form of a leader. They're going to lead out on their site. They're leading the safety charge. potentially going to need to lead in an emergency situation. And that's very inspiring, to see our trainers training people in this every day. Just, I go into work and I sometimes sit and watch the guys down in our facility train and see how everyone's involved and everyone leads. But it inspires me constantly to make sure that what I'm doing is contributing to that and contributing to the success of us as a company and then us as an industry as well. So yeah, on a daily basis.
You've also mentioned you're a strong advocate for women in trades. What changes have you seen in the industry mindset around women in blue collar roles? And what kind of leadership do you see that is needed to continue driving that change forward?
For us, our industry, the wind industry is sort of at the forefront of helping boost numbers of women in trades, but not boost numbers in that old green tick box. I've just got a woman that's out working on site. It's actually putting them into women into roles that, are non-traditional roles that women do. So, we're seeing things like sites now offering multiple toilet facilities. So for men and for women, where in the past it'd be just a portaloo that, good luck sort of thing.
That's good for
Dual
no one.
Yeah, exactly right, especially in some of the warm environments, I couldn't imagine. We're seeing some of the camps that are set up out on sites now offer, dual gender sleeping arrangements, where in the past that wasn't a thing at all. It was everyone sort of you just bunk with who you bunk with, where now it's offering both and giving the ability and, out on site having amenities for women that males might not need. Things like sanitary equipment and things like that are now being put out on sites, which is really good. As an industry, I like to think that we're all working towards the common goal. And, we're seeing daily a lot of our clients, advocating and getting behind having women out on sites. We've got quite a few clients that have women site managers, women project managers, and the like. And we see it as well in our training numbers, where we're increasingly seeing more and more women come through our training, and the majority of our training comes directly through clients. So these are women who are employed and out working in the field. So we're seeing the leadership shift and the shift of clients on a daily basis. And I think we all recognize that women are underrepresented in traditional blue collar roles, and we all understand that women play a part in it. And we could learn some things. A different set of eyes, different perspective on things is always a positive. And I like to think for us, it's a good challenge and a positive challenge that's only going to make things better.
I've definitely heard the feedback and experienced it myself, attending training as a woman in industry where you are the only woman in the room. And if you are in that room with strangers, people who don't know you, there's already that apprehension of being in a room full of strangers. And then I guess the gender factor sometimes makes people a little bit timid because they're not really sure how to interact. And it's funny that I find most of that fear sometimes is because they want to do the right thing, but they're just so worried they're going to do the wrong thing because it has been such a stigmatized conversation in the past. How do you see that play out in a classroom? Are there things that you've seen people attending your training or even your trainers do that kind of help break that ice and create an inclusive environment for everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. We see it often where, like you said, there'll be a class of six, and there'll be one woman in there and five blokes, big burly blokes. But I think what we see often is that the blokes won't take on a role where they take over. It's more, we'll invite you to participate and be involved in this, and we'll sort of see you as the little sister. And if you want a hand, we'll give you a hand, but you've got to ask for us to give you a hand. We're not just going to automatically do it. And I think a real positive with the wind industry is there's no, we'll just do it, and we'll take over and be the leader, and you can just copy. It's, hey, do you want a hand with that? Or, can I assist you? And or letting the woman come and ask for help, but doing it in an approachable way, rather than I've seen in training before where it's all right. I can do that. It's fine. You just stay over there, and really taking over and not allowing everyone to be involved. And with our training, we see people come in who have 10 years experience in the industry, and then people who are on day one. So it's not only that, assisting with women, it's assisting with people who at lesser abilities. And there's a real, not a hand holding, but hey, have a go, and I'll critique you if you want the feedback, and I'll assist you if you want the assistance. Not I'm just going to jump in and do it.
That's really great to hear, because I definitely think that sometimes there's that old-fashioned mentality of, oh, the right thing to do is to offer assistance, but it's counterproductive in a work environment where we're often just trying to make our own way a little bit as women in industry. And that's obviously something that comes quite instinctively in that training environment, and something that is a flow-on effect in your industry.
Yeah, 100%. And we had a couple of weeks ago, we had a lady who had just signed up to become a turbine technician. It was her first week. She was very, very nervous, and she came in, and basically the guy said to her, "Go for it, climb the ladder. You do your thing, and dare yourself to try. And if you fail, you fail, and we'll help you." And there was a real positive push to help her, and it was actually really, really, really wholesome that the guys were there, and she didn't know anyone, they didn't know her, but it was like, jump into the water, and if you feel like you're drowning, yell out, and we'll come and help you. And we've put a lot of work into our trainers, training them on how to deal with diverse personalities and diverse, different backgrounds and things like that. And I think it's a real positive that we see that when anybody comes into our training facility, they're empowered to have a go, and there's no that male bravado, like you were saying, of, we'll just take over and just stand over the side and watch this. It's, we're going to let you have a go, and you know what, if you do it first time, fantastic. But if you fail, who cares? We can show you, we can help you. We're not just going to assume, and we're not just going to take over. We're going to give you that chance first. Where, I think maybe 5 years ago, that probably wouldn't have been the way. It would have been just, let me take over and I'll show you what to do. So a little bit of a shift there, I think for the better.
I found in my experience that a lot of people are typically just like timid, but they have really good intentions. And that tends to be the majority of situations, and just maybe not necessarily what's most talked about. But obviously, women aren't an anomaly. They've been on this earth forever. So they're not something new. They're just sometimes new in certain contexts and certain environments. When it comes to sporting, I definitely know I've had many chats with fellow tradies around this correlation between sport and the blue collar industry, but then also leadership. Do you find that you look back on your sporting or any sporting you're engaged in now, and it still shapes how you kind of lead a team or show up in a team?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a lot of parallels between leadership and being a captain or a coach in a sporting environment into the workforce. And I think it's definitely shaped my leadership, and it's something that I draw on daily. And I do like sport. I watch a lot of sport, and I'm involved in a lot of sport, and I still draw on, sporting adages and, those little anecdotes and things like that. But I think that the main thing is what sport teaches, and to be a leader in sport, is you're a leader of people who are pushing for the same common goal. And in the workplace, for us, it's exactly the same. We all have the same common goal, and that's to see Skylar prosper and grow as an organization, and to provide the highest level of safety training that we can. So, I love using sporting analogies here and there, and sometimes the team are like, "Oh, you and your sport," but it to me, I think it's very relevant.
What sport did you play, or do you still play?
A golfer now, but I've played a bit of everything, to be honest. Cricket, soccer, a little bit of footy and basketball. So I just love sport in general, and that. But my real sporting days are behind me now. I'm just a casual golfer, and occasional tennis hit here and there, but all in fun.
I reckon golf is like the professional sport.
Took it up properly when I was about 18, and getting into, I think, the corporate environment. But golf's actually taking off now. You see more and more men and women taking it on, and you go to a local golf club now, and there's people of all walks, all different backgrounds. It's definitely changed the stigma that it's a rich person's rich person's game, which is great.
When it comes to leadership, obviously it's really easy to identify it in sporting or workplace environments. What's your advice for how anyone can show up as an everyday leader in their life or in their workplace?
I think for me, the main thing is attitude. Just having the right attitude, and not being negative, not being overly positive. Just have the right attitude, and be an advocate. But you don't have to go above and beyond. You don't have to go over the top. It's just if you've got the right attitude around being a leader, then growth and things like that. I think that's for me the most important thing.
And I think when you've shared your leadership journey, you've really showcased that attitude and that flexibility of being mindful of what your team needs and not just what might feel good for you in terms of being a leader and the stereotypes around what leadership might look like or should look like from, I guess, a position of authority. You really showcase that attitude is really valuable and that it creates a great work and team environment, whether in a classroom or just in your professional workplace team.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's different facets of leadership and different types of leaders. And the type of leader I am might be different to the type of leader you are, and the different to the type of leader who's down the road from here. So just being open, and yourself, just being myself, and taking that where it goes, and being very, like I said, just having a good attitude just goes a long way. And then what, no one's perfect. We're not experts at this. It's all a learning experience every single day. But if you're not learning, you're standing still. And in my opinion, what's the point if you're not learning?
As a powerful note to finish on, that leadership is an ongoing growth journey, both professionally and personally. Thank you so much for everything you've shared today, Chris. There was a lot of wisdom that came out of that in terms of how we can be leaders and also the future workforce and learning more about the wind sector as well.
No problems. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure and a really nice conversation.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe to Tradies Who Lead on your preferred podcast platform. Remember to like, share, or leave a review. It helps more tradies join us on their leadership journeys. You can also follow the podcast on social media at Tradies Who Lead for highlights, sneak peeks, and more. Thanks for joining me for this episode. A new episode drops every 2 weeks, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.